Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Leah Anderson. I'm one of the organizers of 1 Million Cups Madison. Today we're going to hear from Moola pitch from Steve. And so one thing that we like to talk about in 1 Million Cups is that it's really a dialogue between the audience and the presenter. We don't want just a pitch and oh, that's nice. So really try to listen today to the presentation, try to poke some holes and ask those tough questions. That's really kind of the goal of 1 Million Cups. So before we get started, a couple of thank yous. First to Baker Tilly for providing our coffee today. We have our friend Dan back there. So all of our coffee comes from Crescendo on Monroe Street. You should check them out. They're lovely. And then Field 59 in the back here is doing our live stream today. And for anybody who's watching the live stream who maybe can't watch the whole thing, you can also catch a video of this on YouTube afterwards. So why don't we go around the room and do some basic introductions first, and then we can get started with Steve's presentation. So again, I'm Leah Anderson. I'm one of the organizers of 1 Million Cups Madison, and I work for Nordic Consulting, which, by the way, we are hiring right now. So if you're looking for a job, talk to me.
Peter Caddy, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch.
Chris Carvolio, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch.
Spencer Perkey, UW student.
Ruin Bergaba, I work for Retail Next.
I'm Brennan Sheedy, part of ISIC Madison.
I'm Dan Anderson. I work for Baker Tilly.
My name is Garrett Lee. I'm founder and co-creator of GoodPoint. I'm trying to transform goodness into currency. I work out of 100 State.
William Hakizimana. I'm the CTO of Export Abroad.
Drew Corson, customer service at Snyder & Boucher.
Joey Frayne, entrepreneurship and innovation team at WEDC.
Kurt Peterson, co-founder of 32 Auctions.
Steve Claude, co-founder of 32 Auctions.
Grant Gellhart with with Madison Score. We offer free business counseling and also a great new in business class.
There's also some SCORE pamphlets over here if you want more information about them. My name is Megan, and I'm an organizer for 1 Million Cups, and I also work at Nordic Consulting.
Great. So we can get you started with Steve. So you have a mic on you.
Oh,
right?
I have a mic on me already, correct. Hi, I'm Steve Dinehart. I'm president of MoolaPitch.com. MoolaPitch.com is a registered Wisconsin securities crowdfunding site. A little background on why we have MoolaPitch up and running now. I've raised a lot of money over the years. I've raised it from my own pocket, from the Friends and Family Plan, less than friends that are that way. Friends and Family Plan, gone to SBA lenders, gotten state government money, meaning like finance authority money. I've done private placements to individuals, to angels. But the problem has always been the ability to go and say to the public, hey, I want to raise money. I got a good deal here. Why don't you invest in me? There have been major changes, however, that occurred over the last couple of years. Number one, a major change that came through is the rise of the donation or the reward-based crowdfunding sites. I'm talking about Kickstarter, Indiegogo, etc. They're out there raising a lot of money. You know, a good case in point is Oculus. Oculus raised $2 million. 18 months later, they were sold for $2 billion over to Facebook. The question was, hey, great, I get my Oculus Rift glasses for my $300 contribution, but why can't I get a piece of the equity? Or why can't I have some debt and have the interest rates flow back to me? So as a result, there are major changes that occurred in 2012. The Jobs Act passed in Congress, which provided three things. Number one, it provided that accredited investors could now be advertised to. You could advertise and solicit money from accredited investors. And there's some sites out there that'll do that. There's AngelList, there's EquityNet. Basically, they put issues out there and advertise directly to the accrediteds out there. I should back up here and provide some definition. Accredited investors basically are the rich people in the world. Bottom line is that couples who make $300,000 a year or more, individuals I believe are at $200,000, or have over $1 million in equity, excluding their home, net worth, excluding their home. Then in Wisconsin, we also have a different category that's below that. It's called certified investors. You only have to make $100,000 a year as an individual, $150,000 as a couple, or have a net worth in excess of $750,000. And then we have all other investors, the regular folk that are out there. It's the regular folk that have been extremely, you can't go out and your aunt's cousin's brother, if you didn't know him personally and didn't solicit them through a conversation, maybe at the Thanksgiving dinner, you couldn't go and reach out to them. Okay, they were restricted by SEC restrictions. SEC has always been very strong on minimizing contact with or protecting the small investor. Let me put it that way. So anyway, the third element of the Jobs Act was putting in securities crowdfunding. And it was a mandate that went over to the SEC, hey, get together regulations so people can go out and raise money by selling securities. Well, the SEC did it 10 days ago. That's 3.5 years after Congress passed the act. And in fact, the SEC regulations will not take effect until next year. In the meantime, because it was taking so long, 24 states went and passed their own regulations that provide for intrastate, which is exempt from the SEC, intrastate offerings to raise money. Wisconsin's one of those 24 states. So quickly here, what is it? Securities crowdfunding is basically a small size public securities offering. It could be debt, it could be equity, it could be 1,000 different permutations, convertible stock, preferred stock, LP interests, limited partnership interests, a variety of different tools that are out there. Small size in the fact that it really addresses what can be raised from small individuals. That is that non-accredited, non-certified investor class. In Wisconsin, we have a cap for $1 million if you don't have audited financials, $2 million if you have audited financials. If under the SEC regs, which are just not as favorable, you can raise $500,000 without audited and $1 million with audited. That doesn't mean that's the total amount you can raise. It's the total amount you can raise from the non-accredited investor base. Why now? As I said, there was the Kickstarter success, the Jobs Act that went through in 2012, all drivers to bring crowdfunding out into the marketplace. How does it work? Basically, a qualified company, which would be an issuer, can go and sell securities to the public if it's executed through a registered portal. Now, moolapitch.com is in fact a registered portal for the purposes of transacting security sales to the crowd in Wisconsin. We're a transactional website. That is, we have two sides to our two customer bases that are coming through our site. Number one, excuse me. Number one are the issuers, and I'm really looking for good input to hear from you guys today because I know a lot of you guys are out raising money or have raised money or want to raise money. Okay, and then the other side, which I'm not really addressing as much today, is the investor side. But basically, what we're trying to do is join those two sides together in a transaction. Well, I should note that we are in beta now. We probably will not live launch until first quarter. And part of the reason we're not live launching the first quarter is I found great reluctance in entrepreneurs in the state of Wisconsin to try crowdfunding. As I said, or alluded to earlier, when I was raising money, I'd do everything I possibly could. And I would suggest that, well, whatever. Anyway, this is a great tool for doing it. Basically what happens is the entrepreneur comes in and through an application process lists all the information, summary information about their company. Number one, what the company's about, what its goals are. Number two, what the customer base is, basically putting in the major elements of the business plan. In addition to that, we will tie in separate docs for the actual business plan, the securities instrument that's being offered, a subscription agreement, financials, and then the disclosure document, which needs to be sent over to the state 10 days before you actually go out and raise money. All these are accessible through the website and a video. We also suggest a video goes online as well. So that an investor would go and see basically the thumbnails. They go to moolapitch.com, they'd register, they see the thumbnails of what was available. If they found a particular project that was interesting, let's say the Epic movie here, basically they go click on it, they'd have further information regarding it. Now this, unfortunately, I set up as a register to invest because I put it through on a different basis. But if he was the actual investor, you would have more than simply a full explanation of what the actual investment opportunity was. But in fact, you'd actually be able to access all those documents and everything else. Quickly, who can use Moola Pitch? Moola Pitch is set up as a Wisconsin site right now. So it has to be a Wisconsin intrastate offering. Okay, it's under the SEC exemption. That means it has to be authorized to do business in Wisconsin, registered in Wisconsin, and on top of it, the majority of its business must be in Wisconsin. If you look, I'm getting into nuances here that probably don't matter, but they do matter. You're basically using an SEC exemption for interstate offerings. So the nexus of business, that is the bulk of the business, has to be originating in Wisconsin. That doesn't mean you can't sell to California. You can sell to Florida. You can sell overseas. You can sell anywhere. Okay? But your people have to be here, or the bulk of your people, about 75%. It's more of an art than a science. It's how lawyers make their money. Okay, so you have to be in Wisconsin. It has to be a Wisconsin interstate offering. It has to only be offered to Wisconsin residents. Okay, so in fact, what we do earlier here, when we register investors, we say, hey, where are you from? Okay, they have to go and affirm the fact that they are in fact Wisconsin residents for tax purposes, and it comes down to tax purposes. So it can only be offered to Wisconsin residents. That said, there has always been a question about, well, hey, what happens if, my uncle down in Florida goes and sees this thing? Well, he can go and see it, okay, but if he's using the exemption that's here, he can't invest in it. And in fact, the SEC, there have been some questions with regard to some of the websites that have been out there, whether you could go and do that or not, and they really pulled it back. A lot of people did not want to use their social media to go and advertise the fact that, hey, I got an offer out there, which is, hey, that's the whole purpose of crowdfunding, right? You're out there, you're reaching out to your community to grow attention to the fact that, hey, you're listed. So, but the SEC is putting out a clarification letter to that effect. And then finally, the sales only can go through a registered site. Under the state of Wisconsin, there are currently 5 sites that are registered. One, which has a different business model than mine, is active. They've actually had 4 issues that have listed on it. My business model is a little bit different, but you have to go through a Wisconsin registered site in order to go and do the execution. And that's so, the state can come back and say, hey, we want to go and track what exactly happened with this. It's basically, a fraud or basically a fraud prevention. What's the benefits of crowdfunding with Moola Pitch? Okay. Number one, it enables you to directly address the general investment community. Okay, there's a lot of people in Wisconsin that are out there investing. Think of investment clubs. It isn't just the angel community here in the state. We have a lot of other folks that are out there that are looking to invest. Okay, it allows you to address that. How are you going to be doing that? Number one, we're going to be advertising Moola Pitch once we're up. Okay, we'll be on, WPR, whatever else, okay, out there addressing the investment community. The other thing is you have to think about the power of the crowd. You have 5 different entrepreneurs listed on here, okay? It may be that somebody is not interested in, it may be somebody in 1212 Flooring Solutions social circles may come to it, and they say, well, you know what, I like 1212, but, shoot, I'd like a little bit of that movie too. Okay. By the same token, you can have people coming in for the movie saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I like a little bit of the Fair Trade Coffee Company. Okay. So you're basically aggregating interest across the investor market and basically leveraging the social networks that all the other entrepreneurs on the circuit have as well. And then on top of it, as I say, our own advertising, PR assistance as well. This allows for low cost. This is the lowest cost public offering vehicle you can get. You go through the SEC, it's significantly more money. Then you can go through a full IPO, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars. But even if you do a Reg A, which is an SEC public offering that is done by a particular issuer without a broker-dealer, it's still a good $50,000 to $100,000, depending on who your attorney is. Another major benefit is it creates an investor-owner team. Okay, so for example, if you're out there doing, I have someone who is looking to post that is doing a device to help people that have gone and injured themselves and have been hospital ridden and basically have atrophied muscles and they need to get these back into shape. Well, they have equipment that they're looking to sell. Now, they're looking to place it in clinics, but the point is, if you have people in the state of Wisconsin, I mean, face it, there are more and more old people in the state of Wisconsin, right? If you have folks there going to the clinic saying, hey, you know what? I'm an investor over in this machine. You really need to pick it up and put it in there. Basically, you're providing feet on the street in the context of this Wisconsin, and it's not simply a question of doing a brewery or doing a pub or doing a food, but you know, you have to view it in a broader sense of having people out there, which are basically going to be evangelists for your company. Securities flexibility. I can talk individually with people on this. I can design instruments, and my background is as investment banking and economics, but I can design instruments that minimize the effect on your cap table. Okay, we're talking no equity here, guys, that are tied into your cash flow stream, that can remove the question of valuation of your company. When you're out there, you're pitching stock, you know, how much is a share of stock going to be? Okay, big question for both investors and the entrepreneur. But we can go and provide that type of flexibility that's in there. And finally, there's major Wisconsin advantages for putting a listing up here. The point is it's cheap. You know, all you're mandated to do is a disclosure document. Moola pitch will require you to do a few other things, but the only thing you're mandated to do is a disclosure document over to the state. We have the certified investor status, which I believe we're the only state in the country with that. It's the only state I know that we have, and it's certainly not an SEC. And we have higher caps for as far as raising money goes. What are the crowdfunding costs? One of the biggest costs to most entrepreneurs is forget confidentiality agreements. You don't get them, okay? You're a public offering. You're out there, you know, putting yourself out, asking people to invest money in you, okay? The bottom line is people are going to find out what you're doing. So if you're worried about confidentiality, this is probably not the route for you. Yeah, you can have some trade secrets. Yeah, you have your patents. But if you're looking about confidentiality over your business plan, it isn't going to happen if you're going to get public money. Legal costs, as I said, legal costs can be as little as, well, I know with some of the crowdfunding offers that have come out already, they've been done, I'll say pro bono, as a learning experience with some of the legal firms. But the point is, you know, generally a disclosure document may cost you $5,000. It's a question of the other documents that you have in subscription agreement, the structure for the financial instrument. I do have some base documents, but the real question is if your attorneys are going to charge a legal opinion or have to do a legal opinion. Then you hit insurance costs and everything else on that. There's a small escrow cost. I should say the way this works is there a minimum and maximum on your offer. Until you hit your minimum, all money has to go to third-party escrow. Third-party escrow is being run by Monona State Bank and Citizen State Bank so far. Those are the only two I'm aware of. There may be some others. It's relatively low cost, but it goes into the escrow until you hit your minimum. At that point, the monies are released into the to the issuer. If it doesn't hit the minimum, you have to give the right to the investors to rescind their purchase. Now, a lot of investors won't. They keep the money in, but you still have to give them the right. Finally, there's a platform cost. We have an initial $500 application fee. Then we have graduated fees depending on the services that are bought. It depends on a full marketing review. It depends on how much is being raised, the length of the raise, and if we're providing investor relation services on the back end. So that said, you know, what I'd really appreciate today is some nice critical review. I asked people to bring tomatoes. I don't necessarily see any here, but, you know, I'm looking for some hard stuff from entrepreneurs here, guys. So thank you.
So just raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll bring the mic over to you. And this is for the recording, so you're not going to hear it project, but it's for the people watching.
I'm curious now that the SEC's, you know, pass this next year is going to be passed. Does that have any effect that, you know, before it was like Wisconsin, you could use a site because you couldn't federally do it, but now with the SEC's regulations passed, does that change anything?
It just provides a different regulatory regime. Okay, so in other words, you can do it under, you can go and issue under the SEC's crowdfunding rules, okay, which are, as I said, more expensive. I mean, the plus on it is you can go nationally with your offer. The minus on it is it costs you more from a regulatory perspective, just in terms of the applications that go in, and you can't raise as much. Okay, so if you can do it, in the context of the state of Wisconsin, maybe you can, maybe you can't, it is beneficial that way.
Does Moola Pitch take any stance or require any disclosures from the companies, from the issuers, with respect to simultaneous offerings? Like if they're doing, if they're relying on 504 for a separate and distinct offering, and then there's the integration look-back issue. Do they warrant that they're not, or they are? Or?
Well, it would be part of the disclosure document.
Okay.
You have to go and put a disclosure document up with the state. Okay.
I just meant with your application process. Does Moola Pitch take that into account?
Oh yeah, no, no, definitely, because if you were going out and doing, it depends. Let me back up. Okay, if you're doing a debt offering, let's say you're doing an equity offering as a Reg D, and you're doing a debt offering through Moola Pitch, I'd expect it to be disclosed, and I requested that it be disclosed. Okay, now the question is, if you were in the middle of doing a Moola Pitch offer, and then they decided to do a special Reg D placement, it would depend on what the Moola Pitch offer was. If the Moola Pitch offer was equity, okay, a Reg D offering would have an effect for equity dilution. If it was a debt offering, maybe not so much. So, I mean, case-by-case basis is what it comes down to. Oh.
Why would an entrepreneur pick a debt offering over an equity offering, and vice versa?
Cost. Yeah. I mean, bottom line is, cost. If you can place a debt offering, and you could take let's say an 8-10%. I've talked to people that were looking to do promissory notes at 18%, which I think is way too high. But bottom line is equity. They don't make any more of it, right? You start off with your pool and that's it. So, like lakefront property. So the idea that you preserve your equity as long as possible because you'll need it down the road. But the question is, are you going to provide an adequate rate of return to your debt? And the other thing with debt is cash flow considerations. Because as soon as you have that debt issued, unless, depending on what the structure of the debt is, maybe there's a delay for a first year or whatever. But normally you'd have, an interest rate flowing out, pretty darn quick. So there's cash flow considerations with the debt versus the equity. From the investor perspective, hey, I get the cash flow off the debt. From the equity, I got to wait till some type of liquidity event happens, which is one of the problems with equity.
It might be a little early because you maybe haven't reached a critical mass of registrants in the platform, but are you seeing trends as far as the most common securities vehicle or typical provisions like a put option? Given that companies in the early stage might face themselves answering to 1,000 investors rather than 5 now, do you anticipate certain trends emerging?
Which I won't discuss, my secret sauce, okay? I urge all my folks to be using a particular type of security. And the reason I urge them to do it is twofold. Number one, keep it simple, stupid, okay? You get onto the site, if you have, preferred stock over here and convertible over here, and here's some debt, and, it's you have to do all sorts of due diligence on it, okay? If you can keep it as basically a simple security instrument, and I basically have 2 that I suggest to people. From an investor perspective, it makes it simple, okay? I don't want to worry about valuations. I don't want them worrying about valuations. I don't want the investor. I don't want the entrepreneur, okay? I don't want to have an effect on voting stock, okay? I want to make sure that something ties up with their cash flow well on a go-forward basis. And part of it depends. They can only use this particular instrument. I'm thinking about if they're going to have cash flow within the first year. If it's longer than the first year, it doesn't work. So anybody who's doing R&D, you're going to have to go to some type of stock, and I would suggest using a non-voting preferred.
So you mentioned that a lot of Wisconsin entrepreneurs are really reluctant to use or you heard that they're very reluctant to use
Right.
crowdfunding. So what are some common reasons you've heard for that, and
It's cost.
how do you convince them otherwise?
I mean, bottom line, it's cost, and in fact, I'm working with Department of Financial Institutions to go and provide a change to the current rules that they have to provide test the waters. Okay, test the waters would allow somebody to go and post with basically minimal cost. Okay, and see how much interest there is in a particular company before you go. And I mean, the big cost is not the platform. The big cost is legal. Okay, so basically, I can go out and let's say I'm doing a craft distillery. I can go out and see what the interest is in that craft distillery, for $500. Okay, and then if I go and prove it out, I say, hey, look, I got $300,000 worth of interest. Then I can go and invest, the 10, 20,000 with legal in order to come through. A lot of people, most people say, well, you're going to guarantee it. No, there's no guarantees in life, right? So, but the point is that that's what I really would like to see as a change in the law, to have a test the waters. And actually, you don't have to change the law. It's just a WDFI rule.
This will be our last question. There will be time afterwards if you want to come up and introduce yourself and ask more questions.
What's the relationship between Moola Pitch and the entrepreneur and a potential investor? And if Moola Pitch at some point becomes insolvent or changes its operation, would the relationship between the investor and the entrepreneur be affected in any way?
No. Okay. We are strictly a transactional intermediary. Okay. We don't touch money, number one. That's why it goes to a third-party escrow. Number two, the issuer is actually selling to the investor. Okay. All we're doing is post-sale. All we're doing is providing investor relations services if the issuer wants it. If the issuer wants to take care of it himself, they can take care of it themselves. They pay extra, then I'll post the quarterly financial results. You have to post quarterly financial results under the state. So bottom line is, the only possible exposure is that an investor went and spent money and then we closed. Okay, not the investor, excuse me, the issuer. It doesn't cost anything to the investor.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. Thanks again to Baker Tilly and Field 59. And thank you again for everyone for coming. Oh, reminder that the week of Thanksgiving, we will not be meeting. I think it's November 23rd. Yeah, so is that next week? No, 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks from now, we will not be meeting. So we will be meeting the week after that. So thanks again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, girls.